Well, whether it's a 22 Creedmoor or a 375 H&H, old Tate here will use them on big game. And that raises a question. Is he being irresponsible? Are any of us being irresponsible in using certain cartridges instead of others? Or is it true that it's more about the bullet and where you place it? And if that is the case, which one of those is more important? Well, we're going to cover that on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast, plus introduce some exciting new segments and some new people who are going to be helping us out. All compliments of Process Space Hunter. Earlier today, I heard you and the boys talking about somebody went on a bear hunt and shot a bear with you using a 22
Creedmoor.
Creedmoor. And what did the bear say about that?
He didn't say anything. He died pretty well instantaneously.
Wow. See, now this is something people would say, that's ridiculous. This was a brown or black bear,
It was a black bear, but it was a big black bear. It was probably a 250-pound bear.
Okay, that's pretty substantial.
It was about a 6.5 foot bear. It's a spring bear, remember. So a 250-pound bear in the spring might be 350 or even 400 pounds in the fall.
Yeah. And, of course, guys over in North Carolina where these huge grain-fed bears are going to say, well, that's a whole other animal from what we're talking about. And it might be, guys. We're not advocating that you apply some of these smaller cartridges and bullets to the really, really, really biggest stuff. But I think it is fair to talk about why or why not. I mean, why do some people insist that the best deer cartridge they've ever used is a 223 Remington? They'll say, like, Ron, my daughters and I have accounted for 25 deer with 25 shots out of our 223. And then the next guy will say, that's irresponsible. You shouldn't even try that, blah, blah, blah.
And then, the same guy that says that's irresponsible will shoot a whitetail deer with a 375 H&H.
And you think that's irresponsible?
I don't think it's irresponsible. Maybe overkill, or it could be irresponsible. I've seen a deer shot with a very, very heavy bullet out of a 30 cal, and the bullet didn't open up because they were using the wrong bullets. Okay. So you're just shooting right through it, right?
Yeah. Well, and I guess that brings up the real crux of it is the bullet, because we get so hung up on cartridges and how much powder you're pushing and what your velocities are and all that we kind of tend to forget that it's the bullet that's doing all the work. And we harp on that on this show. If you've listened to us before, you know this. But still, there are new listeners coming on all the time, and then there are old-timers like me who are kind of set in our ways and we don't want to believe it. But, Tate, what I have found over the years is that the ammunition companies especially, to a degree the gun companies, but both of them will tag team it and really push this knockdown power idea. I call it a myth, because I think what they're all trying to do is one-up each other and get you to buy a new rifle or a new cartridge. So it's always, if you haven't felt that you've gotten great success out of whatever you're shooting now, if you get the next power level up, you're going to find the magic.
Oh, yeah. So what I was talking about with my guides earlier today, going along those lines, is there's so much advertising that goes in. A lot of people don't actually know what they're supposed to be buying. And I'll have people call me and they'll be like, man, I've got this 30-06 and I'm coming out with you. But I had one guy tell me he couldn't afford to come out with me. He already put money down, and then he called me right back and says, I've been doing some research. I can't afford to come out with you. I've got to buy a new rifle. I got to buy a new this. I got to buy a new that. And I was like, wait. What are you shooting right now? And he's like, 30-06. I was like, you're saying a 30 cal's not big enough for an elk? And he's like, well, that's what I've heard is it's too slow.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that totally depends on the range you're shooting at and the bullet type you're shooting it with, right?
Yeah.
And so we had a nice little chat, and he realized that out to 350, 400 yards, his 30-06 was plenty.
So you got his money after all.
I wouldn't have given him back anyway. No, he was a super kidding. Nice guy. That was a joke, by the way.
Yeah. I hope they believe you.
But, and then I've also had people come out with a 6.5 Creedmoor with a nice bonded bullet or a monometal bullet. And they say, my limit's 350 yards. Or one guy this year, his name was Rob, came out this year, and he's just one of my favorite people on the planet. And 300 yards, that was his limit. We had an elk at like 345 yards, would not take the shot.
Good for him.
Yep. And so it's knowing your limits and knowing what what your
Well, what
capabilities
is
are.
the 6.5 Creedmoor? As soon as you open your mouth and said that word, we like half the audience hated us. It's almost like
the other half was like, ah.
yeah, exactly. It's just like politics in the good old U.S. of A. Pick a side, pick a side. But what can you tell us? Practical experience. I know, because I know you well enough, that you do not have a absolutely this cartridge or bigger and nothing in between or nothing smaller and all the rest of it.
No.
But you've had experience with all these different hunters coming out shooting different cartridges and things. What's your honest opinion of the performance of the 6.5 Creedmoor?
I think that it's a fine cartridge as long as you use it within reasonable hunting distance. Usually what I would say, I actually prefer, depending on what I'm hunting, but if I'm going to be shooting at deer, I like a faster bullet. I usually use like a 120 grain CX. I killed a bear, a 6-foot black bear a few years ago with that. I've killed a few deer. I killed the biggest deer of my life with a 6.5 Creedmoor with a 120 grain CX.
No issues with wounding loss and all things like some people complain about?
The only time I've ever had any issues with a 6.5 Creedmoor is with poor shot placement with people.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had the same issues with 30 cals or even, a 300 Weatherby mag. I had a guy shoot an elk 9 times.
9 times?
9 times. And so it really, I've actually never had a single client wound an elk with a 6.5 Creedmoor. Or any other animal for that matter.
Really?
So a couple of my guides have had some poor experiences, but it was because of poor shot placement. Mm-hmm. I shot a pronghorn twice with a 6.5 Creedmoor with a 120 grain CX bullet.
No.
And the first one dropped it. And then I got up and walked a little ways, and then I shot it again, and it fell down. I hit it high the first shot.
High where?
Just high shoulder area.
Okay, so you came close to the spine, probably stunned it, knocked it over. That's
Yeah.
pretty common stuff, guys. If you have an animal that just goes down like so, you can assume you've hit the central nervous system most of the time. Every once in a while, I'll get one on a heart shot or a shoulder shot that will do that, and it's always one of those inexplicables. You go,
Yes.
well, that was knockdown power for sure. Well, no. And then it's the hydrostatic shock theory jumps in there too, but
Yeah.
there's just no real scientific proof that that's what's going on. We can argue that one all day. Most people will too. The point is, it's not unusual to hit an animal with anything that close to the spine and then have it recover. I've done it with 300s of various kinds.
I did it with a 270 with a whitetail.
Did it with the 270 as well. So that's just normal stuff. But what about this argument that, okay, so the Creedmoor is throwing 120 to 140-ish grain bullet most of
Yeah.
the time. And people think, well, that's just way too small. But look at, what was the 270's reputation made on? 130 grain bullet.
Yeah.
Sometimes people would shoot a 150. The smart ones would use a 140 because it splits the difference between them. But at any rate, you've had everything taken with those bullets. Similar thing with some of the 7mm and the 6.5s, the old 6.5 Swede. That one, originally I was thinking shoots a 160 grain bullet, which is pretty heavy, but it's going pretty slowly because it's so big. So you've got the momentum issue with the bigger, heavier bullets, but still it's a small caliber.
Yep.
So what does it really come down to? What is taking these animals out?
It's tissue destruction and blood loss is what really comes down to.
Well, that's been my observation too, because there's so many times you will hit a critter where you think it should have really just knocked the life out of it, like a heart shot. So many people think, oh, well, he heart shot him, he's dead instantly.
I've seen so many animals take a heart shot and run 100 yards.
Routinely. I expect it. When I'm shocked is when I heart shoot something and it falls dead right there.
Yeah.
Very rarely happens.
But what I've seen, so as an example, we're not even talking small to large caliber guns right now. It's not just necessarily like, should you use a 22 Creedmoor on an elk, or should I use a 300 Win Mag on an elk? I've seen elk shot with a 300 Win Mag and a 7 Mag, and I've seen bison shot side by side. Just last week, I saw a bison get shot by a 300 Win Mag, and a bison get shot by a 7 Mag. One of them took about 10 minutes to die. And with bison, when you shoot a buffalo, usually you'll shoot one and then all the other bison will crowd around it.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that.
And it makes it so you can't get a follow-up shot in. So
Okay.
your first one matters a lot. Now, he hit this bison really well. It was just a little bit high lung, but it was still pretty well center of lung, but high. Mm-hmm. And it just stayed on its feet. And finally went down and passed away. But we had a 7 Mag. The 300 Win Mag won a 200 grain ELDX.
Okay.
Complete pass-through.
Wow. With
that-
an ELDX.
With an ELDX. About a 180-yard shot, somewhere right
Yeah,
in there.
most people would say, well, that ELDX is probably going to break up and not penetrate all the way through like that. That's a bison. That's quite a bit of penetration.
That's a lot of penetration. And then the other guy was using a 160 grain, I believe, TTSX from Barnes. And he shot that buffalo and it was dead. Not just down, but dead, not moving within 30 seconds.
Okay. And where did that one land?
Same spot. I mean, they hit within
Really?
2 inches of each other.
Huh. So it's not like it was suddenly a magical difference. And this is another point. You know, one guy will say, well, when I shoot them in the chest, they die right there. And the next guy will say, well, not mine. Mine ran like 100 yards.
Yeah.
And my observations over the years have been, it's not so much how far they run, it's how long.
Yes.
Because in my experience, once you've started that hemorrhaging, obviously the more hemorrhaging, the faster the animal expires. But it comes down to, once again, blood pressure. You've got to have a certain degree of blood pressure or you faint. So when you start to let the blood out of the animal, it's going to reach that point where the blood pressure is low enough that it faints, and then the brain cells are going to eventually die from lack of oxygen.
Yeah.
So is the bigger bullet going to create more hemorrhaging?
It can create more hemorrhaging.
Sometimes,
but that also depends on the bullet you're using. If you're using a highly frangible bullet, like a match grade bullet, you could create more hemorrhaging, but that doesn't necessarily equate to you being able to follow a blood trail. It also doesn't necessarily equate into more knockdown power. Even if you land more energy on a target,
Yeah.
like an elk or a bison or a deer or even an antelope, a lot of times they don't just bang flop. A lot of times, especially the bigger animals, they just take it. Even if it doesn't go all the way through them.
Yeah. Yo, and that's an absolutely essential understanding. So many of us get all worked up about the energy in your bullet. Oh man, my bullet's carrying 3,000 foot-pounds of energy. Mine has got 4,000 foot-pounds of energy. Well, I'll have knockdown power if I get the one that has 5,000 foot-pounds of energy. I've tried that, guys, and those will really not have much different effect on the animal than the lesser ones. It once again comes down to the hemorrhaging, because those big bullets will land and they don't push the animal over. They don't knock him down instantly. It's not like a heavyweight boxer punching you in the head.
No, they'll just soak it up, and then you can give them 2 or 3 sometimes.
And you see this on the videos, so many of these hunting videos where they've got the slow motion of the bullet striking the animal, and you can see its body warping and the energy waves rippling through it. And then when that's done, it calmly stands there or walks off or runs off or something.
Yep.
And it just does not translate into this knockdown power that most of us think of when we hear that term. We figure that that bullet's just going to pick that animal up and slam him to the ground.
And it doesn't happen that way.
But put a .22 long rifle in the brain, and it does.
And it does. And it's going to drop them right then and
So
there.
we're back to bullet placement.
Yep.
So can you have a really bad bullet, place it in the right spot, and get your animal?
You could still do that. So like let's take the 22 long rifle in the brain to a cow. That's how they kill a lot of cows for butchering. I mean, it puts them lights out. We had a kid shoot a bison this year with a 22-250. Lights out.
Where did you hit it?
Severed the spine.
Where
Right
at?
in the neck.
Just the neck?
Just below where the basically where the
head
C-spine
joins
is.
the neck, kind of?
Yeah. And it hit it right there. I mean, it was lights out. It dropped it, never twitched.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not lights out completely, 2 to 3 seconds probably, but that's about as good as you could hope for.
No, but then there's the argument, well, if you do have the wrong bullet and you put it in the right place, it's not going to get to the right place.
That could happen too.
Exterior, it's the right location, but if your bullet is so light and frangible that it explodes,
It doesn't
you
matter.
may not reach that spine.
Also,
right?
if you shoot it right behind the shoulder and you have a very frangible bullet, it may only go in 2 or 3 inches and explode enough that it doesn't even reach vitals, or it only hits one lung. Right?
Yeah, but in my experience on whitetails, they're fairly thin animal. If you get right behind the leg, the foreleg, in that magic zone right where the heart is, especially if he's got his leg forward when you shoot. Archers know all about this stuff. You're probably going to put that in the heart, and there's not much more than about this, an inch at most of hair, hide, a little bit of muscle, maybe a rib bone. I have had many varmint bullets from 22s and 24s that'll punch right through that, get into the heart, lungs, and explode just like on a small varmint, like a prairie dog.
Yeah.
You get the same effect in the heart and lung area. That is a quick demise because the hemorrhaging is massive.
Yeah. So what it all comes down to, Ron, I think, is when I've been looking at clients, a lot of them will call me, and with how the propaganda is anymore, everybody thinks that the cartridge and the numbers of the cartridge is what's going to solve your problems of wounding animals. When in reality, that is not what solves your problems. I mean, yes, you shoot a 375 H&H, it's going to have more energy on target, and maybe you're going to put it down a little bit faster. But in my experience, a well-placed shot out of a 22 Creedmoor is going to put an animal down faster than a poorly placed shot with a 300 Win mag.
Sacrilege. Right in, folks. Let this guy know what you think.
And now I am not advocating that you should use a 22 Creedmoor, but a 22 Creedmoor with a nice like 70 grain AccuBond is going to have better penetration than a 300 Win mag with a 110 grain VMAX.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe, yeah. Gotcha.
So going back to that, though, a lot of people ask me, what's the biggest thing that they can do to prepare? One is get the right bullet choice. I personally prefer a nice bonded bullet, an ABLR, an AccuBond, maybe a core lock, something like that, where you get a little bit more driving force behind it, keep the sectional density going. Monometal bullets are really good. I like to have a blood trail. You can dump energy into something, but what happens when you dump the energy and there's no exit wound is you have a little pinhole and then no exit hole. So where's the blood going to leak out of if that animal does run? It doesn't. That's the answer to that.
No, it doesn't leak out. It does run.
It does run.
It can run.
It can run.
Usually runs.
They
in my
usually
experience.
run.
But yeah, I agree. I like to have that extra hole for a little blood trailing. I shot a nice whitetail buck years ago in Texas in brush country, and it came up to the edge of the brush. I shoot it with a 30-06, probably a 150 grain bullet, maybe a 165, but it was a cup and core bullet. Sure enough, it goes inside and it breaks up and doesn't penetrate. No blood trail. And we're in some thick brush, and now it's a matter of circles and larger circles to stumble over the darned thing because there's just no way to track them.
No. And the other thing is that going along with the bullet, you have to hit your animal in the correct place. And that's why I don't have a caliber limit personally for my business, is because whatever the state decides is the legal limit, that's what I have as my caliber limit.
Sure.
Because I've never had a too small of a caliber or too large of a caliber be the determining factor on whether we retrieve the animal or not.
So when someone books a hunt with you and they say, hey, what should I bring for elk? You don't tell them. Insist that you have at least a 300 Win mag or larger.
Now, I'll make a recommendation to them. I say, hey, I recommend a 6.5 Creedmoor or larger.
Okay.
But if all you have is a 243, come on out and hunt. And if you can't afford anything else right now.
So what are you going to do to limit them while they're hunting? You're not going to let them take an 800-yard shot. You're not going to let them take a 500-yard shot.
But then I will also explain to them, with a 243, you're really limited to 300 yards or less, right?
Yep.
Which most people shouldn't shoot past 5.
With anything.
With anything,
yeah.
Realistically.
Not a 243, you're running out of energy at 500 yards.
Oh, yeah, you're running out of energy. 300 yards is pushing it, being honest, with a 243 on an elk. My personal favorite is this one right here. This is a 7 mag.
Yeah, I knew you'd love that.
Yeah, 7 Remington Magnum. I've shot elk. I've seen elk shot with all different types of bullets, and it's not like it's worse or better than some of the other cartridges. It's just my personal favorite. Now, the one thing is that what you have to do is get your right bullet, and then you need to practice. I had 84% shot opportunity last year with my rifle courses. And that's for those of you who are just tuning into this and you don't know me very well. I do courses where we go out and hunt while we're training you on how to hunt. So you have an elk tag in your pocket and you're trying to kill something. But we had 85% shot opportunity, roughly. We had 24 clients come out. 18 of them had an opportunity. 6 elk were killed.
That's all.
That's all.
What's the problem?
People miss. People miss. And when it's better to have a clean miss than to wound one.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, right.
But a lot of the time, what ends up happening is the client will wound the animal. And like I said at the beginning, I've had a client wound an elk and shoot it 9 times with a 300 Weatherby.
God.
I've seen an elk get gut shot with a 300 Win mag. We never found the elk.
Okay, now why wounding and why gut shot? I know the answer, but I want to hear you say it.
Why wounding?
Why wounding? Why do they wound him? Why do they gut shoot him? Come on, it's an elk. You can't hit an elk?
They can hit them. The problem is that nerves kick into play. People don't recognize how, like one of the guys that missed at 45 yards, and he was a wonderful guy. He was a great shot. He just got nervous.
Yeah, buck fever.
Buck fever got into him, and he missed that animal. Now, what would have happened if he would have hit it in the guts? Elk can take it. Even I've seen mule deer take shots. I've seen bison get shot in the guts and not even act like they've been hit. I've seen bison get shot in the ear hole and not even act like they've been hit.
Wow.
I watched a bison get shot in the ear hole with a 300 Win mag. It dropped on the spot.
300 Win mag in the base the ear,
at the base, which should
which
be
should go right to the brain.
That
right?
should be lights out.
Yeah.
Right. But it fell down, got right back up, started walking off with the rest of the herd. The only way I could tell that it was hit, it was eating. It was down eating grass. The only way I could tell is there was some blood coming out of its nose.
Yeah. So you were able to finish it off.
We were able to finish it off.
That was a weird one, though, wasn't it?
That was shocking to me.
That was shockingly weird, yeah. But see, I've told a story before about that whitetail I guided a kid to, and he shot it similar, just under the brain pan. I mean, when he shot, it was like headshot, brain shot, you're dead, just collapsed. But I was looking through the spotting scope, and I could see this animal's nostrils moving. It's still breathing. So I told the kid to get ready to put another shot into it, and sure enough, that deer got up. After about a minute on the ground, it stood up. Now, it was extremely discombobulated and didn't know where it was, and it walked around in a circle and stuff, because it's got its brain shook pretty severely. Yeah. But it did not kill it. And you would think a 150-grain bullet from a 30-06 sliding just through the head underneath the brain pan would have been enough shock to kill that animal.
You would think so. That would have been a pretty severe
Never
concussion.
underestimate the durability of these animals. It's just, everyone has heard stories like this, and they're true. Some of them are extremely hard to believe, but they must be true based on some of the ones I've actually seen that other people don't believe, and I know they happen, just like you with the 300 in the ear of a bison. Come on.
So I was with Rico, who is my business partner, and we were driving. We had a truck broken down, and we were driving up during a spring bear hunt just a few weeks ago, and we saw some elk off to the side of the road, and they were running pell-mell, just crazy towards the road, and they crossed the road. And I said, right now, I would get my client out of the truck. I would get him off the road to a legal distance. I'd get him down. We'd get him set. I would cow call, and he would miss.
You've got a lot of faith in your clients.
Well, I want to have all the faith in the world, but statistically, more miss than hit. And
Too much excitement,
or they don't practice, or they don't know how to practice.
So the combination is deadly.
The combination can be very deadly or not deadly.
Yeah, not deadly. For
and a lot of that's the biggest issue. The biggest reason I see animals being wounded is not having a small cartridge or too big of a cartridge or the wrong bullet. In some regards, you need to have the right bullet. It's very important, but it's just bad shot placement.
Mm-hmm. So number one, it just isn't really what kills the animal. We still know it's the right bullet in the right place. But still, number one is you've got to be able to put that bullet in the right place. Yeah. So being an effective field shot is job one. And the good news there is you can be that. You can practice and train to be that with whatever you're shooting. And I always say start with a 22 rimfire. No, you don't go elk hunting with it, but you learn to be a good shooter with it. And then even small game hunting, regardless what you hunt, the fact that you're actually out there putting your sights on an animal and taking it, that all helps break down that buck fever stuff because you've got some experience.
Yes.
And then you work your way up the scale. You can jump right to elk if you want, but I would say, next thing you want to do is take on a coyote because, boy, do they get your heart racing when they come in. Holy mackerel.
Oh, I love coyote.
Coyote fever like buck fever.
Jim Harmer from Backfire, right now my hit rate versus shot opportunity, I would say with clients is right around 33%. And Jim Harmer does challenges all the time with, milk jugs and all that kind of stuff. His hit rate with those people that aren't necessarily under that much pressure is about the same.
Really?
Really.
I've seen some of those, and he puts a jug out at 300 yards, 500 yards, whatever it is, and then these guys say, oh, yeah, I can hit that. I've been training. I got my super rifle and all the rest of it, and they still miss.
Yeah. And now I only had about a 52% hit rate when I was on Jim's channel doing that, but my scope was also knocked off. That's another story.
Well, I can honestly claim that I have 100% hit rate because I haven't taken any shots on his channel. I'm going to end my program right there. That's
never try, never fail.
And that is an option, guys. If you never want to miss an animal or screw up a shot, just don't ever take one.
Which some scenarios, that is the best option.
Yeah, that's not a joke right there. Yeah, it's better to know when to say no than to just go ahead and screw it up. Don't want to do that.
Yep.
All right, so let's just narrow this right down. You've got to train to be a good shot.
Yes. That's number one in my
Number one. Overcoming buck fever is going to take some time. There are tricks and trade for that, but we'll just jump to the next step after you've become a great shot. Now you need to be shooting the right bullet.
Within the right range.
Yep, you got to understand your effective range. And then the right bullet is also going to be determined by that distance, because different bullets will open up at different degrees depending on what the energy is when the bullet gets there. So most manufacturers will say this bullet is going to open up pretty reliably and down to about 2,000 feet per second or 1,800 feet per second or whatever it is. It's good to know that. And then at what distance is your bullet going that slowly? There's where you probably want to cut the line off. Or where can you not hit a target anymore? If you're reliable on a 6-inch or 8-inch target to 300 yards every time, I think you're probably okay then.
Oh, yeah.
But not 500. If you're good out to 500 every time, you can probably do it if the conditions are perfect.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is that's a whole nother can of worms, is the long-range side of things. But
So right bullet means not just one bullet. It can vary depending on the velocity that bullet is leaving with. And its ballistic coefficient, so how much energy is it going to hang on to? And one of the problems with this BC stuff is so many people say, what a bunch of nonsense, I'm sick of hearing about it, and they don't realize that it also contributes to energy a lot. It's not just wind deflection and drop and stuff. It's a more efficient bullet, meaning it is not wasting its velocity, pushing a lot of air out of its way. It's streamlined so it slips through the air, there's less drag, it maintains higher velocity, so you get extra effective range for your terminal performance.
Exactly.
Oh, it's so nice to be exact. Happens once in a while. All right, so you got to be able to shoot first of all, and then you have to have the right bullet and put it in the right place.
Yep.
I want to make the argument that you can put the wrong bullet in the right place and still score.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. It's harder to do. But again, that comes down to understanding your bullet. I've many times used a varmint bullet that I wasn't supposed to use, especially on whitetail, mule deer, prongwood stuff, not elk. But again, I understand that if the animal's leg is forward and out of the way and I can slip it behind it through the ribs kind of thing, those bullets will go through the rib bones and get into the vitals and just terminate that animal in a big hurry. But boy, if there's any question in my mind about the situation, like I might get a quick shot that's not perfect, but I'm going to have limited opportunities. It's not like I'm hunting in a game-rich environment. I might get one chance in a week of hunting. I want to be able to shoot that bullet at any angle and reach the vitals.
Yeah.
That's where I want to go with monometal bullets or a bonded bullet, something that's going to stay together, penetrate through a lot of stuff, and still get to the vitals.
Yep, I would agree with that.
There we go.
Now, I brought my team here to meet you as well today, Ron.
Team. I already met this team, guys, but you
haven't.
You may have seen glimpses of them from time to time on some of our videos because they're helping out with targets and observing things and running the cameras and all kinds of stuff. And they're doing our editing now, and I got to tell you guys, they are doing a great job. Both Griff and Landon. Landon does some of these. Griff does most.
Yeah, so Landon actually edits most of the podcasts now.
Okay.
Griffin does most of the regular videos. They switch off from time to time, and I edit whenever I have time.
Okay. But they are also guiding for you.
Yes.
And they're also machinists, both of these young guys. And they're young guys in their 20s.
And they've made gun parts, so they know.
Make gun parts. They've screwed barrels on. And
they're also both professional. They're both not professional, competition shooters.
That's right.
And competition archery shooters.
There wasn't one of them like in the top 10 or something?
Third in the nation.
Third in the nation. On what kind of shooting?
I don't know. Landon, what were you shooting? Everything.
He was shooting everything. I didn't know they had a competition for the shooting everything competition, but he must be good. I have never seen him hit anything out here. He gets all excited. Talk about buck fever. He has steel fever.
I've seen him kill animals. He can't hit steel with crap. No.
Gets too excited. So you want to introduce him? You want to bring him on the show?
I think it'd be fun to introduce these guys, and I know that they've seen a lot of animals get shot as well, working for me and previous.
You want to ask them about that, huh?
I think that you should ask them a little bit about what their perspective on this is.
Okay. Well, why don't you bring them in, and we'll kick you out. We'll plunk them right in here, and we'll see what they have to say. We'll keep it kind of short because I'm sure at the in their 20s they can't have much experience to talk about anyway. Bring them on in. Don't be shy. Come on in here.
I get to sit down on the seat?
Yeah, you have to sit down and everything. Now, the audience is out there behind that little lens.
Everyone.
Yeah, there you go. Now, I want to apologize for making fun of you in one of our videos. We recently did a video where we had Griffin and Landon both shoot, and we didn't tell them what they were shooting. We were going to get a feel for whether they could tell 1 7mm was better than a different one or kick more or whatever. And I don't know, why did you even miss that one? You
I
don't
don't know.
normally.
The gun was off. I'm going to use Tate's excuse. The gun was off. The scope was off.
But I teased him at the end of it and said, no wonder you missed that last elk you shot at. He didn't miss the elk, really.
I killed it. It's fine.
He's a good sport to put up with that kind of nonsense.
I'm okay with making fun of myself every once in a while.
Well, good, because you hang around me, you're going to be made fun of.
I don't mind it.
No, you do great work for us. Now, tell me about your guiding experiences. Tate was saying that, he can have people shoot elk with 6.5 Creedmoors and sometimes even 22s of various kinds.
Yeah.
Similar experiences with you, or do you have a
Yeah.
different idea?
So the first elk I actually killed was with a 6.5 Creedmoor. It was a cow at about 180 yards, and with a 143 LDX, it was just like my dad's rifle. He handed it to me. And we were with this farmer because these elk were coming down eating on his haystack, and so he wanted them gone. So we went down with the farmer, and this elk runs kind of like out from the rest of the herd, and I range it and lay down and shoot it. And it hits, and I immediately know that this elk is dead, and it runs back into the herd, and the farmer's like, oh, it ran back in. I don't know if it's going down. He's like, what did you shoot it with? And I said, oh, it was a 6.5 Creedmoor. And he said, oh, that's why. And right as he says that, the whole herd spreads away. And right there is a dead elk. Within about 90 seconds, this elk was just completely dead. And I hit it like perfect double long. It was a good shot, but I also was within the distance and knew my abilities. But so I'm not entirely a hater of the 6.5 Creedmoor, but I think it has its limits as well.
And what would that limit be? On a distance or the size of the animal or what?
I mean, I would say it determines the animal as well as just the distance. I think, like we were kind of talking about with Tate, is like each cartridge and bullet has its effective distance. Personally, I'm not going to shoot anything with something like that lighter than about 300 yards is about my max.
Yeah, that seems to be a pretty end of the road distance for things like the 243 or the 260 Remington 6.5. You can stretch it a little bit with the right bullet, changing things up and all, knowing how much it's going to expand at what velocity and stuff. But you got to scratch your head on that stuff to try to understand it. Cool.
Yeah.
What would you say is an optimum? What would your choice be? Tate wanted the 7 mag.
Hold on, I'm going to get it thrown.
Boom. There it is.
My personal favorite, the 280 Ackley Improved.
That's a good one.
I've built a rifle a couple years ago with it. My dad had a 280 Remington that he always used to hunt with, and he killed plenty of deer with it.
Yep.
And so I just remember him talking about it, and then I heard about this newfangled 280 Ackley that's supposedly better. So I built a rifle out of it, and I've killed a couple different things with it, and I really like how mild recoiling as well as hard hitting that it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't buy into the hard hitting thing. How do you describe hard hitting?
Yeah.
I've hit stuff with 22s really hard because I hit them in the central nervous system, and it looks hard.
Yeah.
But I've shot them through the chest with what should have been a really hard-hitting big bullet, and it didn't have much of a look to it at all. Kind of like one of those bison Tate was talking about. You can't even tell you hit them.
Yeah.
And I've done that even with deer. Just kind of an average-sized whitetail, and you smack him. I always tell the story about this one rutting buck that was sparring with another one, and the littler one ran off. The big guy turned to the doe, and that's when I shot, and I got him right in the heart. And he spun around with his antlers down, looking for that other buck, because you could just read it in his body language. He thought the other buck had come back and stabbed him. And then when he saw that there was nobody there, you could see the kind of the puzzled look on his face, like, well, what the hey? He sure disappeared in a hurry. Oh, well, back to the girls. He turned around to that doe, and the cameraman was with him. He said, oh, you better shoot him again. You better shoot him again. I said, nah, he's dead on his feet, I've seen this show before. You can see the blood coming out right behind his shoulder. And the guy says, oh, you never know. He might get in the trees and we might lose him, and we got to make a show here. You don't want to screw it up. Oh, okay. So I shot again, hit him 3 inches from the previous shot, also in the heart. And that buck still stayed on his feet and went after that doe. I don't know how much longer he lasted, a few seconds, and then plunk fell over like he would have anyway. So there you go with knockdown power and all the rest of that.
Yeah.
But
I took one of the first guys I took out, his first deer. Didn't know that at the time, but he was shooting a .308 Winchester. I honestly don't even know the bullet. Mossberg Patriot. He had bore sighted it the night before with a scope.
oh my gosh, that's all he had done
That's
for
all
preparation.
he had done. I just didn't know this. I was just helping this guy out.
Yeah.
So we go out and I get him on this just nice first deer, and he shoots, and the deer just gets up and kicks and runs off, and I'm just, oh, you didn't hit it. We go down there and there's just a couple little specks of blood, and I'm like, well, you hit it. I don't know if it was that good. So I follow this blood trail because he's kind of like looking around, still kind of doesn't know really what to do. So I just follow this blood trail, and it's just occasional little drops of blood. I'm like, oh, he's got it, just hit it in the leg, or just some muscle wound, whatever.
Yep.
And about 150 yards away, this deer is just dead. and it's just there. It doesn't look in. I look, and the bullet hole is right behind the shoulder. And as we clean this deer, you cut it open, and the heart is just literally vaporized. Like this, it
Gone,
did not have a heart by the end of this. And yet this deer still ran like 150 yards without a heart.
See, now how much more knockdown power could you put in a bullet to hit an animal in the heart and do any more damage to it? That's it. It's total.
Yeah.
That's why this knockdown power stuff just doesn't work.
Yeah. It's all about placement.
Maybe they should start calling it heart mush power.
That's true. Let's start that trend.
But once again, it still had enough brain cell activity to tell it to run, and it did, and then fell over. Great. Well, appreciate that. We're going to have you back a few more times. I'm really excited to have you working with us, Griff. I love what you do, and I love your creativity. You're really contributing a lot to this channel. So welcome. Why don't you send your cohort Landon in here, and we'll grill him. Take your silly cartridge with you. That thing will bounce off at any deer you put it on, I tell you.
Silly. Here comes the big boys.
Here comes the big boy. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard of Bigfoot. This is Big Landon.
Oh,
Landon, do you always have this much of a mane?
sometimes.
Sometimes?
Sometimes I'm really good at letting it grow through the hunting season and becoming one with the mountains. And then springtime, usually about now, gets cut off. So
You're about due to
it's
get
coming.
cut?
It's coming.
Okay, good. Save it, though. I could use some.
Oh, all right. Copy and paste, right?
Yeah, there you go. Copy and paste, just like you do in the videos. People don't know that most of the videos we make are just a lot of copy and paste.
Oh, I don't think so.
How long you been guiding with Tate?
With Tate, since last year was my first season.
Oh, yeah?
So I've guided since I was like 16 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
With some other guys?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And how long have you personally been hunting?
Since I could walk.
Oh, wow.
I've been following my dad ever since. I love it.
Dad, isn't that great to be able to have a dad who takes you out, or an uncle, or just somebody in the family to get you started?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Really good memories.
Yeah.
Always in the field with, and anytime I could.
Yeah.
Always looking for the next opportunity to be out.
Yeah.
So.
Folks, I can read this in Landon. I've worked with him enough to know that he is Mr. Enthusiasm. Just about anything we're doing, he just loves all of it. So he's into rifles and cartridges and animals, and we were just out putting some targets up, and he was noticing the wildflowers, and that's one of my things. I always like to see what's going on, and he was asking me, what's this one, what's that one? We were sharing a few stories about that, because it's all part of the outdoors we love. It's the reason we love to hunt. I love October. It's my favorite season because it's kind of the heart of the hunting season, and you've got all the colors. But my second favorite season is right about now, when the wildflowers are just sparkling across the landscape. It's
the new life in spring. It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's completely different. Fall is more like, boy, we've got to get busy and get the wood in and the meat in and the vegetables and dig the potatoes and get, ready for winter. But in the spring, it's like, relax. It's all growing, it's all new. Yeah, what a difference.
Love it.
Well, getting back to hunting with your cartridges, I'm sure you've seen all sorts of things shot, and you're going to have a favorite, and that is it.
That's it.
The big boy.
I'm a big boy. I love the 300 PRC.
What do you like about that?
Everything.
Well, that simplifies it.
That quote-unquote knockdown power. It's got good velocities, big bullets, I like to shoot the 210 grain AccuBond, long range.
Yeah.
It does anything I ask it to.
So you got plenty of reach, wind deflections, pretty
Could be
minimized.
seized. Yep.
Recoil doesn't bother you.
No, muzzle devices, they're handy.
Yeah. What about if you had to shoot without one? Because when I was growing up, it was like, oh, gosh, the 300 Weatherby Magnum is a great cartridge, but brutal. Oh, the recoil is worse on that than it is on a 416 Rigby or a 458. And you name it, they thought the 300 Weatherby had the worst recoil. And, of course, it's not true. It doesn't have that heavy of a bullet. It's not going that fast. It's kind of snappy, but a lot of people think it is, and if it feels like it to you, I guess that's what it is. But if you had to shoot that without a muzzle brake or a suppressor, could you handle it?
Probably, but I'd choose a 270 over that.
Would you?
Absolutely.
It's a good reason.
I grew up hunting with 270. I've seen plenty of things die with the 150 grain AccuBond once again. Hard to beat the 270.
Yeah. Shoots plenty flat. It's not that far off, really, even from this big 300. So why do you think there are so many Magnums out there and so many people think they need one to come out west to hunt an elk or a moose or a bear?
Well, I think you and Griffin touched on it. That knockdown power. People think they need this great big wham, right? They think the more energy you can give, the more energy the animal's going to take. I don't see it. I've personally killed multiple things with a 22 250 AI and a 22 Creedmoor. They die just as fast, just as hard.
There you go.
So I don't know. I don't know why. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think it's I don't know if they don't understand elk are big. They need big things. Right?
I think so.
6.5 Creedmoor with a good bullet. 6.5
I think it's those two things and maybe one more, but it's all the harping that's been done for the last 100 years or so on magnums and how important it is to have it and knockdown power. And plus, this is America where bigger is better. And most people know that if you've got a bigger hammer, you're probably going to be more effective at smashing something. But bullets just don't work that way. And then you've shot enough targets. You know, shoot a steel target, they're swinging, and you would think, well, if you're hitting those things with 3,000 to 4,000 foot-pounds of energy, this should knock the post right out of the ground.
I'll tell you, I've shot steel at 1,000 with a 300 and 22. They both ding.
They both go ding.
It doesn't really matter. You can hear it, you can see it.
Yeah.
They both do the same.
Yeah, and we've done a number of shows in which we've tried to knock things over by shooting them with different things. Usually use firewood because that's what we have the most of around here. It's easily accessible. But people are just amazed that you get a 20-pound block of maple and you drive that bullet in there, it stays inside, and that thing just kind of wobbles or maybe slowly topples over. And that's 20 pounds, and you're looking at an elk that's 700 pounds. How are you going to knock him over?
I don't know. Can you tell me? I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've seen him just legs under him and tip over.
Central nervous system, in my experience. I've yet to have one that was hit anywhere but the central nervous system that just got knocked over. But I've seen it a few times on whitetail and mule deer. Yeah. You know, and it's that, called it hydrostatic shock, and some people say it's that nerve bundle right in the middle of the body, or that, solar plexus is another plexus. What's the other plexus? There's some kind of a supposedly nerve junction above the heart somewhere in the chest. Can't remember. Betsy, can you remember the name of that?
Brachial? Is it brachial?
Plexus, what?
Brachial?
Brachial, that's it, the brachial plexus. Whether that's it or not, I don't know. But it doesn't really matter because I know what it takes to terminate an animal, and it's, as we've said, got to be able to put the right bullet in the right place.
I agree with that 100%.
All right. Well, hey, looking forward to working with you more. We appreciate what you're doing for the channel. It's helping out a lot.
Exciting. It's exciting.
Hey, and you guys like to see guys like this and what contributions they're throwing in here. And if they're starting to add a little bit to the channel, you let us know and we'll pull them in a little bit more because kind of have a hunch they've got a few things up their sleeves that might benefit all of us. Now, folks, there's one more segment we are thinking of adding into the show that I think might strike a chord with you. Let us know what you think of this segment. If you like it a lot, we'll use it more often. This is going to be called Griffin Bitchin'.
Thank you, Ron, for letting me vent.
Here comes the vent.
I'm really happy to be here and to relieve some thoughts on my mind that have really been eating me up.
All right, well, you tell everybody out there what's got you bitching today.
There are leftists amongst us, Ron.
There are leftists?
In the gun community.
What?
So many gun companies nowadays, and previously when I was growing up, I'm left-eye dominant. So therefore I shoot guns left-handed.
You what?
I shoot guns left-handed.
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 Dun, dun, dun.
Not this hand, this hand. So many gun companies nowadays, it's really hard to find left-handed rifles. In some cases, there are certain companies that charge you more money for those left-handed rifles. And as a leftist here, I can't get my hands on those rifles. It's really hard. I've had to build custom rifles specifically because I can't find them. And in some cases, they're even limiting the choices of calibers I have for those left-handed rifles. So gun companies, y'all need to get your crap together and let me give some gosh dang left-handed rifles.
You right-wing extremists.
Yes, leftists unite.
Okay, we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Ron.
All right, folks, so you heard it right from the horse's mouth. Leftists unite in the gun community. Let us know if we need to straighten this thing out. All you lefties write in, and you want them to send any money or anything, Griff, to kind of help the cause?
Yeah, send me money. All the money you want.
Send a lot of money to Griff, and then write to the gun companies and complain. Make them left-handed actions. Okay. Well, Tate, I got to tell you, you've got quite a team there working for you. Where did you dredge these guys up?
Oh, I went to the homeless shelter and no.
I come from the cave.
So honestly, I met Griffin on a hunt in Mexico, and I met Landon through him. But I just had so much fun working with them. Honestly, there's never a dull moment with those guys.
I know.
If you walked into our office, you'd think you'd walked into Duck Dynasty. Honestly, we're pretty ridiculous most of the time.
Well, Landon would fit right into Duck Dynasty.
Yes, he would, in more ways than you know.
Yeah, okay. Well, great. Well, listen, you and I need to wrap this up. What you had something else you wanted to talk about?
So I have availability still for muzzleloader and archery hunts for this fall. I can get guaranteed tags. What we do is we take people out hunting. We teach you how to hunt while you have an elk tag in your pocket.
So you don't just guide somebody, you instruct them.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yep.
Which, guys, you can learn a lot on a guided hunt just by observing and saying, okay, I know what this guy's doing. I'm going to do it myself next time. But you will actually say, pay attention to this part because this is how you want to do it in this situation.
Yes.
But in a different one, you might want to do it this way.
Yeah,
That kind of stuff.
and every situation is different depending on which ways the wind is blowing, depending on it's evening or morning, depending on, because that determines on where the thermals are blowing.
Yep.
There's, depending on the time of year, depends on how you're going to structure, your hunt. There's a lot that goes into these elk hunts and just Western hunting in general. And so what we're trying to do is take the learning curve away. We had one client come out last year say that we took 5 years off of his learning curve. It was like 5 years of knowledge.
Thought you were going to say his life.
It took 5 years right off of his life. But the goal for me is to really help guys have more obtainable, more affordable hunting opportunities in the West.
Okay.
And now I have to charge to do that because I got to provide for my family, obviously. But I want to do it the best I possibly can. And I only want them to have to come with me once.
Gee, you don't hear this very often from guides. They like repeat customers.
I was shocked how many people wanted to come back. I think probably 80% of my clients were like, are you going to do another course like this? I was like, well, the point was so that you didn't have to, but I'll try and figure something out.
Well, I was there last year for the first time at his elk course, and I got to tell you, I know why those guys want to come back because we just had so much fun. Not only are they learning, but they're probably shooting more times in a day here than they do all year back home.
Yes.
Where else are they going to have a range at which they can shoot to 1,000 yards, 2,000 yards, down canyons, across, up, downhill, everywhere?
With instruction of knowing how to do it correctly.
Yeah, with people helping you and watching your shots and saying, look, here's what you're doing wrong. You're canting your rifle. You're not accommodating the wind deflection. Got to remember, coming out of a canyon like that in the middle of the day, the heat is rising, so your bullet's actually not going to drop as much. Where are you going to discover that stuff?
Yeah. Joseph Von Benedict, you and me.
Yeah, we're the experts. Well, some of us.
But
so you've got some openings yet this year?
I do. I have some for my elk hunting boot camp as well.
Okay.
And you're going to be on the elk hunting boot camp. Joseph Von Benedict is going to be at the elk hunting boot camp. And then I also have guarantee tags for muzzleloader and archery. And I only have a few available spots left.
So where do people get a hold of you if they want to go to one of these schools? Now, you're not talking strictly about a school, though. You're actually going to do a hunt.
Yes, so
this
we're
is you're
actually
booking a
hunting.
hunt.
You have an elk tag in your pocket, 7-day experience, 2 days of courses, and then 5 days of hunting with instruction and help.
Wow. 5 days.
And you look us up, processbasehunter.com. We'd love to have you out for this fall.
All right. There you go, guys. Well, guys, thanks for listening in. Now, before we end this segment, I do want to remember to mention the Knives of Alaska Ron Spomer Outdoors Classic Hunter Knife. We've got a 10% off sale going on these guys, plus free shipping. Plus, you can get your father, your grandfather, whoever you're buying the knife for, their name embossed on this knife. So you don't just have to put up with my name and my ugly mug on there, but you can have paws on there as well. The only guy in hunting camp with a Ron Spomer endorsed knife with his private name on it, and what a ticket. Now, these are Magna Cut steel, full tang knife, as you saw. The G10 synthetic handle, which is just about impervious to everything, and has a great grip, just about the right size. I cannot imagine a hunter not appreciating a gift like this. So if Landon doesn't buy me one, you can. No, wait a minute. Get one for your dad. That's who needs one. Well, thank you, Tate, and thanks for bringing the crew in. Thanks, crew. Thanks, Betsy, for not making us do too much more than we really wanted to. It's unusual that Betsy didn't chime in on any of this. But maybe the camera picked her up in the background yelling at us when we screwed up. Most of the time, she does a pretty good job of keeping me in line. I think she sort of fell off this time a little bit. We'll hold her to it next time. We might even introduce Betsy in the next show.
That's because we have Landon and Griffin here.
So we didn't screw up as much. Okay. All right, I guess that's it for this show, guys. I really appreciate you all listening in. Let us know if we're doing these things right, if you like the direction we're kind of leaning toward right now. Personally, I'd like to hear more bitchin' Griffin. Until next time, Ron Spomer not bitchin' on Honest and Shoot Straight.